Hello again, Tom Maguire. I'm just going to review the book Don't Trust Your Gut, Using Data Instead of Instinct to Make Better Choices by Seth Stephens-Davidowicz. Seth Stephens-Davidowicz. I've actually read a couple of reviews on this book, which isn't something I often do. I normally try to, once I've read or listened to a book, I normally try to avoid reviews so as not to skew what it is that I'm going to say. Kind of the idea of me doing these reviews is that I kind of talk about what it is I've taken in, and it helps me kind of crystallize in my mind what it is I've learned, what it is I've taken from the book. I tend to do these reviews in one hit so as to save time because I'm extremely busy, and I find that if I put myself under pressure to do it in one go, it kind of makes me better at speaking in front of a camera on the spot. I kind of feel as though there's no room for error, although I do make plenty of errors. There we go. I make plenty of errors, but I would rather do it that way rather than doing take after take after take. So I'm also just being very honest with you as well. So these reviews I often say I do them for my kids so that they can look back and get an idea of what it is their dad was kind of influenced by and enjoyed. They can have a laugh at me trying to be a YouTuber and all of that sort of stuff. But I also just absolutely love listening to books and reading books. I love talking about them and kind of thinking about them. And a really good book does kind of stay in my mind for a little while. I'm quite conscious as well. I tend to get through about 80 books a year, and I'm quite conscious sometimes of moving on to the next book a bit too quickly. I think it's quite good advice to actually take a bit of time just to sort of ponder the book that you've read and taken in and sort of think about it a little bit. But I tend to rush on a bit. And so these reviews help me go back kind of a few days and help me kind of refresh my thinking. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers at all in this review. I've noticed some of the other reviews are kind of people who have been a bit offended by this book, which I don't think is really a good enough reason to rate a book badly. I think if you're offended by something, then that's kind of your problem, and you kind of need to have a bit of a think about why you're offended by it, really. This book uses kind of big data is what he calls it, statistics, that sort of thing. And obviously when you listen to or read something like that, you kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt to a certain extent. You know, everyone's statistics are sort of different to someone else's, and data isn't 100% reliable necessarily. It's kind of supposed to be, and I suppose he kind of talks about it in this book as if it is, but I always just take anything really with a certain pinch of salt and kind of with a bit of an open mind. And he might say a few harsh truths in here when it comes to kind of relationships and, you know, what makes people attractive and who are the most attractive people and who are the least attractive people and all these sorts of things. You know, if you're offended by that, you know, sorry, but that's just kind of life, isn't it? There are certain things, there are certain realities that we would struggle to get away from. And being offended doesn't really make any difference to it, really. The only problem that causes is for you as the individual. So it tends to cause problems for other people as well if you keep sort of going on about it too much. It's it gets quite boring to listen to, doesn't it? But yeah, so his previous book was called Everybody Lies, and I've been told that that is a better book. I haven't read it. I intend to give it a go after listening to this one. This one, apparently, people have said it's a bit thin. It's a little bit kind of cheesy in a way, but I kind of quite liked that about it. I kind of found that it put me in mind of some of the more old school personal development, self-help type books. I couldn't put my finger quite on which one it was that it reminded me of, but something along the lines of kind of The Magic of Thinking Big or something. Very, very different book, but just the style, the kind of conversational style, the way it was written kind of reminded me of that. And that's a book I really, really enjoyed. So naturally, I quite enjoyed this one as well. I've said before, the more you listen to personal development, the more you read personal development and self-help, the more you get used to recurring themes. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if you're keen to improve yourself and you want to become the best version of yourself you possibly can, it's good to go over this stuff more than once. None of us are going to take it in from one book and then immediately change our lives. You take away small little bits from every book and you try to implement them in different ways. And they build up over time. It's more a kind of a war of attrition, of wearing down the sort of negativity and the voice that says that you can't do it. And the more you listen to these kind of books, the stronger you become in that respect, I think. I think also you need to kind of keep an open mind and try other stuff as well. Otherwise you risk being kind of brainwashed and sort of a bit too one-dimensional. But I do think it's okay going over stuff and just having that kind of positive voice, that motivational voice there from time to time, just kind of giving you that sort of shove in the back a little bit, I think, just to kind of keep you going and keep you encouraged. I think it's good. I enjoy it. He talks a lot about luck and how some of the most successful people will cite luck as being a significant part of their journey. And of course they do, because successful people like to appear humble, don't they, to a certain extent, But I do agree with that. I do think that anyone who has any success has to kind of appreciate that there's a certain amount of luck involved. Where it is you've ended up, where you were born, the area that you live in, the people who have come into your life. What we do does have a huge influence on that. It does have a huge influence on who we attract to us and where we go, where we put ourselves. But luck and fortune has to be a big part of it, doesn't it? But we know that, so that wasn't really anything new. There's loads of stuff in this book that isn't massively new, but it is interesting and it's quite well told. I think I would describe it as quite an entertaining book, quite an easy listen, which I think is good. I think if you're new to personal development, that's really good. It'll kind of get you going. It'll give you a bit of momentum. For someone like myself who's a bit more seasoned, again, you find yourself sort of thinking, okay, there's not a hell of a lot here. But I did find a few bits there that kind of inspired me a little bit and kind of got me going. So that's absolutely fine. So yeah, I've not really given anything away, which I think is a good thing. I've enjoyed this book. I think it's narrated well. It's a good listen. It's one that I could consider reading as well, to be fair, although I'm so kind of keen to crack on all the time with the next book all the time. And I often say that as well, that actually I tend to get through about 80 books a year approximately. And actually every year I think to myself, should I just do sort of 40 this year and kind of spend double the amount of time and just try to soak it in better? And in some ways I think that probably would be a good thing to do, but I'm just too kind of keen and passionate to kind of crack on with new stuff and learn new stuff. So inevitably that doesn't happen, even though I know probably it might be better to do it that way. So I kind of need to be a bit more disciplined potentially. But I love listening to books. I love reading books. So if you enjoy this channel, please like and subscribe. I enjoy doing it, and I'll be on to my next book review very soon. Thank you very much. Speak soon.